She's been in the radio and television businesses in Charleston for more than 20 years. And in this edition of Quintin Reports, I sit down with Patrice Smith to talk about her life after broadcasting. Patrice, you have been out of the television business for a couple of years now.
I have been, because of the economy back in the 08, 09, the station decided to basically retire me.
Oh no.
Well, that's not a bad thing. There were several of us that were let go.
Okay.
And they were fortunate enough, I was fortunate enough that they let me actually finish up my contract.
Oh, that's good.
So they told me in January of 09 that they were not going to renew my contract in June of 09. And I was actually like, yay.
Yeah.
I was a little tired.
I know.
I'd been doing it a while.
Yes.
And so I needed a break.
So tell me, how are you?
I'm doing really well.
Yes.
I'm doing really well. I didn't realize how stressful that job was until I'm no longer in it.
Wow.
So I've got a pretty stress-free life these days, and I'm just kind of taking my time and living the life.
Yes. Well, tell me, how difficult was it to be let go from a television station that gave you your first break in television?
Actually, they didn't give me that first break.
Okay.
See, this is where we go back into history.
Yes.
Back in the late 1980s, when Star Cable was around, Star Cable came before Comcast.
That's true.
A friend of mine who actually went to Morehouse when I was in Spelman was in charge of the local origination programming. And at the time, I was at Z93, and I had a public affairs program, and he suggested that we televise my public affairs program. So I actually got my first break in television in the mid-'80s, and I think that prepared me for television. So it was not hard to be let go at all.
Yes.
I was kind of ready.
There you go. Well, during your time at Channel 4, you actually worked with legends such as Dean Swanson and Mike Hyde.
Yeah.
Tell me your memories of working with those two.
Dean Swanson was very, very helpful to me because, of course, he'd been in the industry for a while and had been in television news, and this was my first attempt at television news. And so he gave me lots and lots of pointers. So I learned a lot from him. I was really sad when they let him go. Back in the day, I think there was before they were trying to go younger. Yeah. And he had been there probably 13, 14 years, had a great set of pipes. He was kind of a legend. Everybody liked him, but they decided to go younger. So I only worked with him maybe, I don't even think I worked with him for a year. I don't think so before, they brought in somebody else. I'm not quite sure who that was because, of course, I've worked with numerous
people. That's right.
Over the years, numerous folks. And so then they brought in Mike Hyatt, and he was a lot of fun.
Yes.
He was a lot of fun. He had been let go from Channel 5 after probably 30, 40 years.
That's right.
And so, this gave him the opportunity to do the news. And he didn't do it, we didn't work together that long. I think what happened with him was, he was a television legend, had been in the industry, at Channel 5 probably, since it was on the air.
That's right.
So he knew a lot. And I think he kind of clashed with the news director. In fact, I know he did, who was younger. So, they had a difference of opinions on a lot of things.
Yes.
And so Mike said, I don't have to do this.
Right. Yeah, he's technically retired at that point.
So I think that's the reason why he left. But I enjoyed working with him too, learned a lot from his work.
Yes. Well, before Channel 4, you actually worked at Z93, as you mentioned, the station news director. And from what I read, they called you to cover a convention. Talk to me about that. In
1982, I had been laid off from WTMA.
That's
WTMA at one point used to be top 40, and they had news. And I was on maternity leave, and they laid me off, which was a blessing too. Every time I get laid off,
it's a blessing, yes.
It really is. Well, I didn't want to put my newborn in daycare, which was a new phenomenon back then.
That's
so
right.
I didn't want to put a 4-week-old baby in daycare. So when they laid me off, I was able to collect unemployment and everything. So I was fine.
Yeah.
And so she was born in May. In July, Jesse Jackson's Push Convention was being held in Charleston.
That's right.
And Z93 actually called me up. The station manager called me up because he knew of my history of news at TMA.
Right.
And he said, excuse me, would you cover this convention? And I said, sure. So I went out with my, my little tape recorder and, did a really good job for them. So they thought, and I thought too, it was very interesting. And then about maybe a month or so later, I got a call from them saying that they were going to actually start up a news department at Z93 in January of 1983. And what I headed up, and I was like,
yeah.
And the rest is history.
History, yes.
Yeah.
Well, listen, before Z93, you actually were the afternoon news anchor at WTMA. Tell me, how did the radio bug fit you?
I went to Spelman College and I got my training at WCLK, which is Clark's radio station.
Oh.
It's still there.
Wow.
And back then, that's when we played records and all
Yes.
that kind of stuff. And we did news. I also had to do news on the radio station too, so I was trained in this.
Sure.
And so when I came home, actually, I was given this job. Well, to be perfectly honest, all of my jobs in the media were given to me. I was just blessed that way.
That's
and
right.
It's not like what you know, it's who you know. My
That's
father, God rest his soul, is the reason why I got into the industry, and he knew somebody.
Who knew somebody?
And they said, well, he said, my daughter just got this big degree from Spelman in communication, so hire her.
Yes.
So I was hired.
That's
and
awesome.
I really enjoyed it.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
Yes.
So I was kind of like, even though I was trained in it, I was kind of, not really forced, but I was, kind of given an introduction to it.
Yes.
So I don't know if the radio bug necessarily bit me or not, but I was given the opportunity and I grew to learn.
That is awesome. Well, obviously you had some trials in 1982 when you were working at WTMA, and as you mentioned, you went on maternity leave and they laid you off.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that was not the most ideal time to lay you off, Patrice.
It was, though. It really was, because of the fact that, again, I just did not want to put my newborn in daycare.
That's right, yeah.
And, I'm a praying woman, and I was blessed by the Lord,
Yes.
and He just, provided all of my needs, and, they laid me off, and I was like, fine,
Yes.
because they owed me 3 years in vacation pay.
Wow.
So they gave me this chunk of change.
Right.
And then I was getting unemployment.
Yes.
And then, I got all the other social services that were available.
And you
as
weren't too proud to ask for those things either.
Not at all, because, I had worked. So, these are things that you work for,
Right.
and, you pay into the system.
Exactly.
And, I was quite eligible
Yes.
because, I was a mother and I was not working.
Wow.
So I was eligible for all these services, and I took full advantage of them.
There you go.
And they paid me straight until January of 1983.
Wow.
So it worked out perfect.
Yes. Well, I know that you are a woman of God. Tell me, how did God help you through those situations?
It's just, you just have to trust. You have to trust.
Yes.
You learn, you pray, you say, Lord, take care of me. In His word, He promises. He says, I will help you.
That's right.
And He says, cast all your cares and burdens upon Him.
Right.
And I just did all that. I just watched Him. Just miraculous things, occurred. Of course, I had this wonderful baby, and just opportunities came open, and I had cousins that had children, and they had all these wonderful clothes and furniture.
I heard about that.
Yes.
Hand-me-downs.
Hand-me-downs, and I was never too ashamed to take anything because, one of my cousins had stuff from Paris.
Wow.
So I had, my daughter's bedding had French writing on it.
Really?
So, I was given a lot of things,
Yes.
and then, I was just provided for.
Yes.
And so I never found it to be difficult, really, at all. And I thank the Lord for that.
That's right.
Because I was excited about being a mommy, and, of course, when you have a baby, you want to stay home with her.
Right.
And I was very fortunate because generally, when you're working, if I had still been at channel at WTMA, I would have had to go back to work in like 6 weeks or later. That's what maternity leave was at that time.
Yeah.
So, I got to actually sit out for almost 8 months. And that was the first time that I had not worked, in a long time. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about family.
yes.
How is your daughter Lauren doing right now?
My daughter Lauren turned 30 years old.
Wow.
I know. She's 30 years old. She's doing quite well. She's in the church now. She's working at the church daycare, and she has gone back to school.
That's awesome.
And then my father passed recently, and she came to live with me. So she's back in the house. So we're doing good. She's doing good. I'm proud of her.
Well, unfortunately, and this is what I read too. When she was actually born, the sperm donor wasn't available.
Yes. Did you see this article? You
I
saw
did
that
see that.
article on
Yeah,
Newbie Mom?
yeah.
The sperm donor decided not to become a part of my life or her life at that
Oh my
time.
goodness.
That was a lot. It was obviously disappointing and heartbreaking.
Right.
But you got through that too. And years later, he came around.
Yes.
And he is, they're not as close as I would like them to be, but he is in her life now.
Okay.
And so, things just kind of work out.
That's right.
All things work out.
Absolutely, with God.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because
Well,
I had asked the Lord to provide that
Yes.
for her.
And it came true.
It did come to pass.
Yeah.
But she was also fortunate, and I was also fortunate in that my father basically became her father. So she grew up a lot like I did.
Yeah.
So, at this time, when she was born, of course, this is his granddaughter, so he's semi-retired. So he
Right.
had lots of time with her.
Yeah, that's right.
So, because I worked the morning shift in television and in radio, Lauren would stay at my parents' house at night. So, and then, they'd take her to school and then I'd pick her up in the daytime.
That's right.
And then, we'd have dinner and stuff, do homework, and then I'd take her down there at night. So she actually grew up in the same type household that I did, which was interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, so she got a good rearing.
Yes. Well, listen, I know that for a while you have been living in North Charleston. Tell me, why is North Charleston so special to you?
Because of the fact that I think that's the first place that we moved. I'm
Really?
from Richmond, Virginia.
Really?
I am
love
from Richmond. Do you?
Yes.
Richmond is a great town. I was there about 2 weeks ago, as a
Really?
matter of fact. And my father got transferred here. North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company was like a black insurance company that was started way back when. And he was moved down here, transferred to Charleston to be a manager here
Okay.
in the Charleston office. And that's what brought us here. And we moved to North Charleston. We moved to Jenkins Terrace,
Yes.
which is off Dorchester Road.
That's right.
And I lived in West Ashley for a while, and then when I had my daughter, I bought a house in North Charleston because I wanted to be close to my parents.
That's
Because
right.
of the fact, just like I said, I always had to take her.
Yes.
She was very dependent on her grandparents, and so I wanted to be close. So I bought a house within about 5 miles of them, which is like 5 minutes.
Yes.
And I've just been there ever since, and I like North Charleston.
That is
I like
awesome.
North Charleston. It's gotten a little dangerous. It's changed a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, I ask the Lord to keep us safe.
Say, there you go. Give us that divine protection.
Exactly.
So describe to me the following in one word. Faith.
God.
Yes.
Or maybe I should say trust.
Yes. One word to describe Spelman College.
Wonderful. You said one word, but I would say
big
that was
time.
the most exciting time of my entire life. That was the best 4 years of my life, and nothing really has compared to it since.
One word to describe radio.
Fun.
One word to describe television.
Interesting.
That is
Very
true.
interesting because coming from radio to television was a whole different ball of wax.
That's right.
Because of course the voice is the same.
Yes.
But in radio, I could pretty much come in to work anyway, looking any
Pajamas.
kind of way.
Right.
And then of course when it comes to television, you got to dress up. I have to get up and put this makeup on
Right.
and hair and all that.
Yeah.
And then of course there's a different demeanor, obviously, for television as well.
Yes.
And I had to learn that I could not, do and say some of the same
Oh,
things
yes.
that I used to say in radio. So it was a learning experience, and it
Yes.
was very interesting. And I saw and did a lot. Met a lot of great people and did a lot of fun interviews,
Yes.
and was in on a lot of big stories.
That's
So it was really an interesting experience.
One word to describe Patrice Smith.
What word would I say? I would say content.
Yes.
At this point in my life, I've done a lot, seen a lot, and at this point in my life, I'm just kind of content with where I am right now.
Yes. Well, tell me, what is the next chapter for Patrice Smith?
Well, yesterday, my pastor actually prophesied over me and told me that I was going to be in television ministry,
Oh, really?
and I was totally shocked. He has been talking about the prophetic word
Yes.
for the past couple of Sundays, and he was under the power of the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit, he just called my name out in the middle of church. He said, "Patrice, you are going to be in television ministry."
I can see that happening.
And my mouth was like, but I'm open to whatever the Lord has in store for me. I believe that all that television experience that I got can be further used. And I always want to be in a position where I could use my talents to the glory of God.
There you go.
So we'll see what happens. I'm just kind of, I'm really kind of in an expectant mode to see what God's going to do, how he's going to open this door, because I have no idea how that would happen. No idea.
Yeah.
Because, they're not, I think there's one Christian TV station here, but, I'm not necessarily in ministry, so I don't know how he's going to work that out.
God works in mysterious ways.
He does work in mysterious ways, and then I take that back. I guess maybe I don't have like a formal ministry, like as you would say, but I try to witness to people,
Yes.
and so I guess that does make us ministers of song.
Oh, absolutely. Because we are ambassadors of Christ.
We are.
Yes.
We are.
Well, Patrice Smith, it was so good talking to you.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you
Yes.
for thinking of me.
Oh, anytime.